Alright, so I'm going to be trying to review this next series. I'm not sure if I want to just review the first 4 movies, and because I don't want to review the remake and the prequel to the remake. I'm talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. Um, I don't want to review the remake and the prequel to the remake. I just want to review the franchise, view the original franchise. So I don't know if I want to review Texas Chainsaw 3D and Leatherface, which I might, because those two connect to the original series. I'm trying to avoid remakes right now, so I can review them later. But anyway, so the first one is, of course, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which came out in 1974, and it's directed by Tobe Hooper. This is not a good quality DVD. And I want to get the 40th anniversary edition, but this was like the best, cheapest one they had when I could get at the time. So, but of course, this is a classic in the horror genre, and it's considered one of the first proto slasher films. It's called proto slasher because this is before the slasher genre was established, and that wasn't established until Halloween and Friday the 13th, and this came out years before before Halloween and Friday the 13th came out. So, it's about, of course, the plot. It's about a group of people. 2 of them are siblings, one named Sally, and the other one is Franklin. And they're traveling across Texas to find, because they received an inheritance for their grandparents, so they're going to go to the grandparents' house. And once they get there, they find out that the local cemetery has been grave robbed. So they wanted to check to make sure their grandparents' corpses were still there. And they asked the locals, they're like, hey, can you show us to where the old Franklin house is? Or the Hardesty, yeah, Franklin house, yeah. That's what they say. And there's like a old man there that kind of warns them. They said, you shouldn't be, going about where you're not supposed to. It was something like that. And, oh, there's things here about we don't tell about. That's it. And, so this kind of freaks out Franklin. Franklin's in a wheelchair, and I don't know if he has like a mental problem, but he acts like it. But he's really fucking annoying. Like, he's like one of the most annoying characters in this movie. And, but he starts getting suspicious, and like he starts obsessing over these things. So like the group, they're traveling down the road, and Franklin's talking about slaughterhouse and how to kill the cows, and it's starting to creep out one of the girls in the car or in the van. And then they see a hitchhiker, and they're like, oh, we should pick him up because it's blazing hot. It's in Texas, it's blazing hot during the summer. And they pick him up, and he starts acting weird, and he's like, he starts taking pictures of him. He's like, I want money for this picture. It's a good picture. And they're like, no, we don't want it, and we're not going to give you money. So he takes the picture and he puts it like in aluminum and puts gunpowder on it and sets it on fire. And then earlier, he takes out a knife, and he cuts his hand, and he's like bleeding everywhere. And he's like, I have this knife. It's a good knife. And then Jerry, one of the people in the van, he like takes it from him. Oh no, the hitchhiker's trying to give it to him. And he's like, no man, I'm fine. And then, yeah, he takes the picture and sets the picture on fire, and like starts exploding. So they freak out and they kick him out the car, and he starts chasing after him, put blood over the car, kicking it. and he cuts. Oh yeah, before he gets out, he cuts Franklin's arm, and then so they go up to a gas station, and you know, they're like, "Can you tell us where the old Franklin house is, and or where we can get gas and food?" And he's like, "Oh, you can get gas here, and we're having a barbecue." So Franklin's sitting in the car, and he starts assessing about stuff, and he's like, "What do you think that guy meant by that?" and all that. And then they get to the house, and of course, while they're going around the house, two of them wander off to go swimming, and then they find this house. And of course, one of them goes in, and he gets hit over the head by a hammer by Leatherface. This is where Leatherface first appears. And so sorry, and slowly the group gets killed off one by one. Oh, yeah. This is probably one of the most influential independent horror films ever made, besides Night of the Living Dead and Halloween. Um, Despite the title, it's actually not that bloody, and there's only one or, well, I guess two chainsaw deaths, kind of. Well, one of those is definitely a chainsaw death. I don't know about the second one. That's kind of like questionable. But yeah, it's not that bloody at all. There's only like a few gore scenes. There's one scene where a guy named, I think it's Kurt. Yeah, Kurt. He goes into the house. He's the first one to go into the house, and he's like, he hears like pig noises. This is the Sawyer house. He hears pig noises, and he walks in, and there's like this doorway, a hallway in the back. It's like all made up. You see like a bunch of skulls and furs hanging up, and he trips over, and then Leatherface comes out and whacks him in the head with a mallet and knocks him out, and he starts twitching and convulsing, and then Leatherface hits him again, pulls him in, and then slams the door shut. Like I said, that's the first time you see Leatherface. I'm sorry, there's something in my throat. Then the two other people come into the house, or his girlfriend comes into the house, and there's that famous shot where she's walking up to the house, and you see like her ass and shorts, and walking up to the house. I was like, okay. And then so she goes up to the house, and then she goes into this one room, and then she falls down, and she just sees like a bunch of feathers and bones everywhere, like chicken bones and shit. There's like a chair made out of like bones, like it looks like a skeleton, but it's like pulled out. There's like chickens hanging from cages from the ceiling. They're alive, they're just in the cages. And then Leatherface chases her, hangs her up on a meat hook. And then her boyfriend's like laying out on the table, and he comes up to her, and he takes the chainsaw, starts sawing his head off, but you don't see it, it's just implied. Then later on, Jerry, one of the other guys, he goes to look for him, and he goes into the house, and Leatherface chases him, knocks him out, and then sticks him in he goes into the house. Yeah, and then he hears like a knocking in the freezer, and he opens it, and then that girl flops out, and then Leatherface comes up behind him, knocks him in the head, and drags him off. God. So now it's just Sally and Franklin, and like Franklin's the most annoying character in this movie. I can't stand him. You're supposed to be rooted for this guy, and all he does is whine and complain. He's like, Sally, Sally. Well, there's like a scene where they actually go to the Franklin house, and they're hanging out, and they're all having fun, and he's having trouble. I mean, it's kind of messed up, but he is annoying. So they left him. He's in a wheelchair, so he's having a hard time getting around. And he hears them laughing upstairs and stuff. And he goes like, hold on. He was like, come on, Franklin. It's gonna be a fun trip. If I have any more fun today, I won't think I'm gonna be able to take you. But yeah, so they're worried. I'm sorry, let me go back. So they're worried. So they're walking through the woods to go look for him. And Franklin's being loud as hell. That's probably why he gave away their spot. And he's like, Sally, I hear something. Stop. And then Leatherface comes out, starts cutting him up with the chainsaw, and you just sees blood splattering over Leatherface. And then Sally runs off. And then there's a big old chase scene between Sally and Leatherface. Sally runs back to the gas station, and she sees the old man there. And he's like, oh, I'll get you help and all that. He drags her out. He puts her like in a burlap sack, like her head, and then pushes her in the car. And they're like driving down to the house. And he's just like, it's like, yeah, you like that? You like that? He's like hitting her with like a stick. And then like he drives up to the house, and you see like the hitchhiker earlier that was in the van. He's like running around the road and shit. And then like the guy gets out, the old man gets out. He's known as the cook in the movie. He's like, what you been doing, boy? I know you've been playing in the graveyards. He's like, get your ass in there. And he was like, I was like, this is a weird ass family. So whenever the chase happened, Leatherface like cut the door with the chainsaw. So like the cook goes up to the house and he yells at the hitchhiker. He's like, look what your brother did to the door. He don't have no pride in his home. And then like they go inside, and then there's the infamous dinner table scene, which this scene does kind of annoy me because all it is like her screaming, and they're like laughing and yelling at her, and she's like, tied up to a chair, and they're like, and she's screaming, and then it's like close up of her eyes and her mouth, and her going like, ah, like that. And then, so they're like, oh, let's get Grandpa. Grandpa knows is the best killer in the world. So it's like they bring down this old decrepit guy. He's basically like a freaking corpse, like a mummy. They bring him downstairs, and they put her head over a bucket, and they give him a hammer, and he's trying to like, smack her in the head with the hammer, and he keeps missing and stuff because he's like, barely alive. And she escapes, and she jumps out the window and runs from the house, so Leatherface starts chasing after her. She runs out to the road, and this guy is driving not pickup truck, a 18-wheeler. He stops to help her, and he pulls a wrench out and throws it at Leatherface and hits him in the head, and Leatherface like, oh, like that. And I'm like, nothing else will hurt this fucking guy but a freaking wrench will. So he runs off. So the truck driver runs off. You don't know what the hell happens to him. So like this guy comes up in a pickup truck, and then Sally jumps in the back, and they drive off, and then you see Leatherface with the chainsaw going, boom, 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 boom. Yeah, and then it ends. I forgot to mention the opening. You hear like this like Polaroid camera going off. It's a really creepy sound. It was like eek, eek, like that. And then you see like this corpse like mounted on top of a tombstone, and it looks really creepy looking. Yeah, I would, like I said, this is a classic. I would highly recommend it. It's not gory, like the title will say. It's not really gory. There's like a few gory bits. Like the main gory scene is Franklin's death. But Yeah, I mean, I like the feel of the movie. It has a very realistic feel. It feels like a documentary. It feels like they actually just found these people out in the middle of nowhere, like a bunch of crazies out in the middle of nowhere, and like shot a movie. But yeah, like I said, it's a classic. It's one of the first proto slasher films, and you know it has its own legacy now. So that's my review.